Vini Causer, or Come Chat in French Creole, is the organization of Eastern Caribbean States Commission's Public Education Forum series on regional integration. It examines the many associated topics implicit in the regional integration process as the OECS becomes more interconnected socially, culturally, and economically. The Vini Causer Forum series, which I have the honor of hosting and moderating, provides an opportunity for grassroots citizens, key decision makers, observers, and experts within their field to discuss and debate in front of a live audience the development, opportunities, and challenges facing the OECS under key themes inherent in the regional integration process. As a publicly accessible Q&A medium, this is a platform and a conduit for a collective citizens' voice to help shape national and regional policies. We've come to the Tortola Pier Park, located in Roadtown, Tortola, British Virgin Islands, an OECS associate member state, to launch this dynamic public forum series under the theme Education, Creating Tomorrow's Leaders Today. My name is Onel Sanford Bell. The panelists are selected to obtain the greatest depth and diversity of views, with gender and social inclusion awareness being key priorities. This is Vini Causer. Come chat.
Vini Causer. Come talk, come chat, come listen. Vini Causer. Let's talk integration, one OECS region. Anguilla, Vini Causer, BVI, Dominica, Vini Causer, hey, Grenada, Vini Causer, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Montserrat, Martinique, Vini Causer.
To begin, I would like to invite the panelists to tell us a little about their personal successes achieved within the educational sector. And I'd like to invite the Minister of Education to share a little about his successes with us.
Thank you very much. Certainly it's indeed a pleasure to be here on this panel to discuss education in the OECS. I wouldn't see the changes that we have made in education as my successes. I think it's all designed for the benefit of our students. One of the very first things we did was we started something called an unemployment program, a youth employment services program, to be able to immediately look at those young people who just left the school system, who said that they couldn't find work, and to be able to do somewhat of an analysis of where they were in the education level. And there was a direct correlation between the education and the unemployment, because we recognized they didn't have the skills. We're in a small community, and you hear from the business community all the time that you are releasing students into the business community for us, and we don't have an involvement, or we don't have a say in what you bring to us. And we're not pleased with, in many instances, with the product that we get. So we drew closer to the business community, because the business community wants to have persons coming out of the system that can help to move their businesses along and are prepared to make an investment very early while they're still in formal education.
Thank you, Minister Walwyn. We will have an opportunity to come back to you to talk a little more about your policies. I'm sure that the successes could be many for the Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, headquartered in Barbados. I'd like to invite Mr. Kamabaj to tell us, in a nutshell, perhaps, what is one of the most recent successes within CXC that you are perhaps most proud about because of the potential of the impact?
I will tell you two. We were able over the period of time to diversify our curriculum, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, to focus very much our CAPE programs on those students who are leaving school and who are preparing themselves for the workforce. So we have subjects like animation and game design as something that persons who do the CAPE program can immediately use their skills to create employment for themselves and their families. agricultural science. And in the agricultural science, the program at Cape is to take a raw product, a raw good, and convert it into a finished product and make it available for sale and so on. Entrepreneurship, which is the one that has the most hits on it in terms of students taking it. Logistics and supply chain. Jamaica, for example, is looking at creating a hub within the Caribbean for the ships going through the Panama Canal. And in order for that to be successful, you will need several people with qualifications in logistics and supply chain. The other one is the use of technology. Some years ago, we used to have to take several people across the Caribbean using the airlines available in the Caribbean from one point to another point to mark our scripts. Over 4,500 people marked over 1 million scripts within a period of 4 weeks. We are able to convert that into a marking system where people can remain in their homes and mark utilizing technology. And the other one in technology is e-testing. This month was the first time that students were allowed to write their examinations using their computer, not having to have paper in front of them, but able to go on their computer, log on, have the test, finish the test, and the test goes through.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Kamabach, for that overview. I want to diversify things a bit and introduce Lindell's dynamic here to our discussion. Lindell, we have this afternoon so many students with us in the audience. I'm wondering if there's something you can share with us in terms of your success story within the challenges you faced as a mother at 14 years old, and then moving on to returning to school and completing 12 CXC subjects with 8 grade 1s, went on to teach biology in a secondary school, and now working as a pharmacy attendant, well on her way to becoming a pharmacist. So tell us a little about how you were able to move through those various phases of your life at such a tender age.
First of all, I would like to say that I think it was a great opportunity given to me to return to school, because you find that in some Caribbean countries, after a young lady gets pregnant in school, she's not allowed to come back to school and to get that education that she needs. Because I was given that opportunity, I am seated here today with the support of teachers and counselors, of course. I want to say that I did face many challenges, because going to school, a stigma is attached to teenage mothers. The stigma is that they're uneducated, they're promiscuous. In no way am I feel that any child in school is supposed to be getting pregnant. That should not be happening, because mentally, physically, emotionally, or financially, that child is not prepared. But at the same time, I'm saying that if and when these things do happen, it is very important that the young person or the mother says to herself, you know what, I can do better. But for me, mainly, it was the mentality that we need to break the cycle that young people get pregnant in school and then they're like, for lack of a better word, castaways. And it's like they make children upon children, and that was not the case. It was my mentality, and I needed to go forward, and my focus is still to become a pharmacist and to achieve even more after that.
We look forward to hearing more from you, Lindell. Janicki, what it is that drives you, that allows you to be so focused on all the things that you want to achieve?
Thank you for having me here with this distinguished panel. For me, actually, in large part, I think the hallmark of going through the public school system in St. Lucia and doing my CXCs there was the ability to be flexible and be very broad in what I was allowed to explore.
And just to give the audience some perspective here, and I just wanted to mention that I first met Janicki through a news item that I had produced for a television station. And at the time, Janicki expressed that he wanted to be a nanoscientist. I wrote Cambridge University in the UK, told them about Janicki, and that he had learned everything that he expressed to us via his own independent research. It was on his own volition that he went about inquiring about nanoscience. Cambridge University invited Janek to the campus, and they were very delighted and indeed impressed with the knowledge that he displayed. So that's just to provide some background as to the kind of driven person that Janek is. So tell us a little about your successes in maintaining that focus and drive.
One of the most valuable resources that, you know, our countries have is that we have this, you know, vast reservoir of young people who have very curious minds. And, you know, when we, it's very hard to get a young person to focus and really apply themselves to something when they're not sure if they like it or they don't like it. But once you've been given that opportunity, or sort of had that first taste, you know, of something that you think you might want to do, I think at that point, you know, it sort of becomes your responsibility. Your education is something that you take ownership of. And I think in many ways, that is in large part what drives me.
Mrs. Amory, you have come from the banking sector and made a quantum leap into education. It was a career change. What it is that inspired you to take such a leap?
Driving force behind me opening the school was because I had become a mother. I was living in St. Kitts, and I wanted an alternative education for my children, and a lot of parents were telling me that they were looking for something else too. From my business background, I then went and became a Montessori teacher, and the thing that really inspired me through that educational system is that it's a holistic system. So it's not just academically driven. In 2001, when I opened the school with 10 kids, it was drastically different than anything else that was on St. Kitts for that primary level. There was so much resistance towards believing that the education system that I wanted to deliver was the best for people's children. Fortunately for me, I had my own 2 children who I saw every evening, and I could see exactly how well they were developing in the system, so it made me just really believe that it was the best, and kept working towards it getting bigger and better.
Okay, thank you for that overview. The issue of relevancy within the education system is a sub-theme that we'd really like to delve into this afternoon.
You have to be able to reassess and see what's happening. We have tried a number of things. One of the major planks that we have tried to do in the education system is to make education more relevant to life, to work, and to make sure that we produce students who can function not only in the local environment, but also to be very good global citizens.
Minister Walwyn, Janicki mentioned a crucial word, curiosity. The children are curious and they want flexibility to explore different interests and express themselves through that. And I'm wondering, in deciding policies, how is that catered to, that curiosity?
When the OECS meets as ministers, the issue of continuing to generate the interest and to keep the attention of our students and to see education as the vehicle for diversity in the economies of our various countries is why you need to have the different new generation subjects like entrepreneurship and other things that are coming along. Financial services is one of the main economic pillars in this territory. We saw that curiosity, that same curiosity that you're talking about, we saw that coming out. And so we approached CXC to be able to do that subject. We introduced an additional year in our school system, so we now have 13 years of education versus 12. And the students who are in grade 12 are now being exposed to new subjects, communication skills. We intend to get gaming and animation and different things in there to be able to, again, tickle their curiosity and do exactly what has been done for this good gentleman here from St. Lucia who's doing so well.
So I love hearing these words, relevant education, diversity, because I really believe that that's what in the 21st century education needs everywhere, not only in the Caribbean, everywhere.
Well, relevance in education must focus on a couple of things, because the purpose of education really is to build a better citizenry. A citizenry which include economic citizens, cultural citizens, social citizens. That is the focus of education. And we can't labor only on economic citizen, on a person to drive the economy. When we look at what is happening in schools, a lot of that is being done.
Yes. I think it's a good time to introduce our first film segment, which also touches on the issue of relevancy within education.
I think students are voting with their feet and are going away from some of the more academic areas to the more technical vocational areas.
Whereas before, persons thought that technical drawing and building tech and electricals were subjects for students who were not as academically inclined, that trend is changing.
They want an education that's more relevant to the world that they will go into beyond Form 5.
The TVET program is booming right now. A lot of students want to go into TVET. We have students, a lot of students doing drama. Very soon from now, we will start a dance program.
We see CXC now moving to TVET, and they want to improve that area. But what we've found is that quite a number of the schools are not equipped to actually deliver that content. So I think that's really an urgent need. Improvement of the school plan, I think, should be at the top of the agenda right now, right up there with training of the staff.
A lot more students are desiring an education that is technology-based. What we have done at Clay Hall to support that is that we offer an online program.
We're going to be piloting in our public secondary schools an e-textbook initiative, which also provides our students with the opportunity for more individualized learning at their own pace. It gives the learner more responsibility, if you like, for their own learning so that they can go back or read forward.
I think one of the major needs in reform is providing necessary resources for the job at the time. Do teachers need retooling? I think so. I think we need to do a lot more when it comes to technology in education. For the most part, I think the cure for education is not necessarily the teachers, and many times when persons look at education, the first thing they say is that we need to focus on the teachers. I do think we need professional development, and I do think we need to do the training and all of that, but I am also of the view that one of the greatest needs in education right now is to provide resources to cater to the needs of our students at this point in time.
I'm sure there was a lot coming out of the video that members of the panel could relate to and identify with.
When you look in the Virgin Islands, and perhaps it might be the same in other Caribbean countries, and the other members will have to say, that if you look intensely at times, you may think that you have an unemployment problem. But if you look a little closer, you perhaps have a skills problem. Yes. That the jobs are available, but the skills, the persons coming through the education system are not properly equipped in many instances to take advantage of those responsibilities.
So it was a mismatch of skills.
A mismatch of skills in many respects. It calls for introspection and a real good review of the education system to see if we are really doing what we're supposed to be doing to better prepare those students. So we looked at the issue of technical and vocational education. We had an existing school that we think wasn't providing the standard of education, vocational-wise, that we needed, and the government decided to take that school on, revamp it, put proper programs in place. We made a major investment in equipment to make sure we deliver quality programs in some of the jobs, for instance, in the BVI, that we have to bring persons into the territory to do.
In relation to the technology, technical subjects, we hear lots of that. But when we look at entries, actual people who enter for those technology subjects, the numbers are not growing. So there's some mismatch happening. Students say they want to do technology subjects, but in fact, those numbers are not growing. So there is, maybe they're doing it, but they're not entering exams.
Okay. So I wanted to address the trend, or at least what seems to be the trend of students participating in CXC examinations with unprecedented numbers of subjects.
My name is Shane Martin and I'm 24 and I'm living in Antigua. My name is David Bowers. I'm 19 years of age. I like football, as you can see. I'm out in the park watching the game. Actually, I'm not a chef exactly, but being a steward is like helping out in the kitchen, help the cooks wash up and stuff like that. So I think I'm well educated because having 4 subjects and now that's not all of me know that, but I just life. But more times when you go for a work and so, it's now according to what you say in the interview, get your job. I passed 4 subjects in the CXC, building technology, technical drawing, social studies, and agriculture. You know, sometimes we have about 10, 15 subjects and we find somebody with 3 subjects. Get the job that you were interested in. Maybe some students don't feel like they get the necessary interactions with the teachers that they desire.
Some people, mother or father or their heritage, they might have told them to do good in this subject or do that, or to top CXC, because that is what everyone is aiming for.
I don't find myself needing 16 plus subjects. I know a few people, 1 or 2, that do around 14 plus subjects. And those are people that I know that aren't in any extracurricular activities. They don't play sports. So I guess maybe that's just a bonus for them. Maybe they just want some extra to do, or they have plans where these subjects are actually going to come in place. I don't really think that taking 16 or more CXC subjects is really necessary. I find it to be preparing yourself to be overqualified, because in most businesses, they don't like to hire overqualified people because they don't think they can pay them, etc. So I think a minimum of 8 subjects would be enough.
There's this elitist view of education in that the more you have in the form of number of subjects, the better person you will become, or the more successful you will be. I disagree with that. I'm not sure if that is actually the case, because in my view, having 22 CXCs doesn't make you a more skillful person, or doesn't make you the most ideal worker.
Because if we really look at what happens after school, there is no first degree that you need or that you'll ever get from any institution in this world where you need 16 subjects. None. So if you can, you have the time, you have the ability, you have the capacity, and you want to explore and challenge yourself, feel free, go right ahead. I am all for it. But I don't think that it's necessary. And it's not really indicative of a trend. It's just that there are some talented students who can.
What is CXC's response to that?
Well, our response is very clear. If you have good systems, if you're self-regulated, if you understand the content and the skills that underlie subjects, you can do a number of subjects from that. And people do as many as 30 subjects in one sitting. But when you meet some of those children, they're part of the guides, they're part of the scouts, they know all the latest movies, they know all the latest songs. So they are regular students, but they have developed the capacity and they have the undergirding skills and the curiosity to be successful in a large number of subjects.
But in a very real sense, how does it translate? Is it necessary? Does it give them an edge? To what end?
I don't know to what end. I can't say to what end. But if we are talking about relevance and curiosity and those kind of things, then we're going to have different people doing different things. They have people who can play many instruments. They can play a piano, they can play a guitar, and we praise that. The more instruments they play, we praise them for what they can do.
For CXC, I did 13 subjects actually, not because I was, trying to beat somebody's number, but because there were a lot of different things that I wanted to try, and at that time that I was interested in. And I think through that sort of process of exploration, I found that there were certain areas that really drew me in and piqued my interest. And I think a lot of, that drive and sort of focus to go ahead and study physics at the University of Chicago really came from that process of exploration and discovery.
I don't think somebody should say, in order to get social respectability or some acceptance, you have to do this. And there was a guy who did very well recently won the awards, and his mother was actually called to the school to say, your son is lazy. He's only doing 12 subjects. That kind of pressure should not be placed on anybody. If you're capable of it, then do it. If you're not capable, then you should not be forced to do it.
And I appreciate that response, because in the video we also saw a gentleman considering himself well-educated with 4 CXC subjects. So from the CXC standpoint, what is an appropriate amount of subjects?
So that will answer this way. CXC awards are based on 8 subjects, right? But let it also bear in mind that the subjects that the jobs that are going to be available for some of these students who are now going through the school system have not yet been created. And I think sometimes we have to be very careful when we tie a program too closely to jobs that exist, when there is a rapid changing environment, a job environment.
And what we don't want is for people to just have qualifications for the sake of having them. Because you may have students who might go overseas and come back and can't find a job in the community, which is exactly what the gentleman from Antigua was saying when he was challenging 4 subjects versus 16 subjects. I think what is perhaps missing is more correct guidance at a very, very early age as well for what you want to do as a career path. And if that guidance is given early enough, then you can find students who are doing subjects that sort of fit what their career path is like.
One of the challenges we have is to try to redefine what is intelligence and who are the contributors to our economies and who should be valued, and not just a small group of professions.
I wanted to get Mr. Marcellus Albertin response to the discussion so far.
Thank you very much. Let me just say from the start that if we were to leave this discussion at this point in time, most people would live with the impression that we're doing extremely well in education because of the examples that we have on stage, yeah? And they do represent a particular percentage, and that percentage, I dare say, is about 30%. And so for us at the OECS Commission, the question is, what do we do with the other 70% who are not as brilliant, who are not doing the 5s and the 6s and the 7s and the 12s subjects, yeah? There are those who are entering school and dropping out before they complete secondary education. There are those who get to Form 5 and are not allowed to sit CXC. There are those who sit CXC and live without one CXC subject. What do we have in place to ensure that those students realize their potential, and they do have potential just as those others who are succeeding? And this has been our challenge, to develop a regional strategy in education that actually addresses just that we provide an education system that is equitable enough that it provides resources and support for those who are not doing very well in the system.
So the equity you just mentioned, to what extent did universal education address equity?
Well, the policy of universal access to education actually addresses that equity issue.
But did it have an impact on the 70% that you just mentioned?
And there lies a critical issue, that whereas we are right now in a position to ensure that almost everyone gets into secondary school. The issue for us is to ensure that everyone succeeds at secondary school. And there lies the two critical issues.
Thank you.
I taught for a short period of time, and being exposed to young ladies, I was also able to see not only the challenge of teenage pregnancy, but so many challenges that young people face in schools. And a lot of the times they come and they speak to you certain ways, and then you're like, but how is it that this child is that way? But then we have to look at the environment that some of these people come from, that some of the students come from.
And yes, we do celebrate that 30% that do very well. Based on what was said by the young lady, there are a number of reasons why you have that 70% falling behind. And it's up to us as educators to be able to, yes, look at their personal circumstances, look at how they learn as well, and try to diversify learning through professional development for teachers, and devising policies that somewhat ensure their success.
Going on from what Marcella said, last year in our May-June examinations, out of the students who, well, the candidates, because they're not all students, out of the candidates who wrote our exam, 36,000 got back no subjects at all.
Wow.
Now, but let's put that in context, because more people are writing examinations in 2016 than who wrote examinations when I was at school. However, they're not sufficient to drive the economies, the service economies in the region.
Everybody that I've had a discussion with today agreed with me that not necessarily the best students make the best job and the best adults once they finish school, and the people that are the most successful weren't necessarily the best students in school. So how do you balance that?
Let us be fairly clear that in the end, generally, parents make the choices of what subjects their children take. So all of us have a job to do in trying to convince parents when being a doctor, being a lawyer, being an engineer, are those things valued in our societies as the intelligent people? How do you convince people then that they should not pursue these fields, but they should pursue other fields? The United States education system does this very well. All people don't get high school qualifications or high school diplomas, but they get alternative qualifications that can help them to continue to develop their education. So we have to find ways of looking at other qualifications instead of snubbing our noses at other types of qualifications and only accepting the elite qualification.
What we really want to do is make those investments in technology to sort of remove some of the load from our teachers so that they can place more of the emphasis on students who are having difficulty rather than spending most of their time on students like me.
We have to find a way to be able to infuse technology in the education process for, again, diversity in learning, and also to do exactly what you did. We're trying to find out what a nanoscientist is all about and what it's all about. If you didn't have that discipline, if you didn't have the environment created for you to be able to do that, and the curiosity of mind, then you probably would not have found out some of the things that you did.
At this point, I'd like to invite any questions from the audience.
My name is Joshua Abrams, and I'm from Brigada Flex Educational Center. Okay. How soon will we students in the BVI be able to sit CXC examinations online?
I know that the testing has been done already on it, and from my conversation with Mr. Cumberbatch, it seemed like it went very well. So certainly it is something that we'll be looking at. I wouldn't give you a specific date, but certainly if it works well, I think it's something that we perhaps might get on board with.
All right, thanks.
My name is Hubert Wong.
And you're a teacher here at the high school?
I'm a teacher at the high school. I teach at the community college and I teach at the university. And I just want to make an observation. Our problem is a problem of literacy. And that problem, almost in a simplistic way, comes from the fact that in the last 30 years, we have moved from a culture where we all read to a culture where we are now manipulating technology, which has distracted us for the most part from gaining the knowledge and the expertise, which is absolutely important as the cornerstone for getting a proper education. Simply, I believe that for us to change that 70% to 7%, we need to reintroduce reading as a core subject throughout the Caribbean.
Okay. Thank you.
Somebody made another point about teachers, and teachers not necessarily being the core of the education process. I disagree with that completely. This fight about resources, and what I'm saying is this: we have an issue with who comes into the profession, and that has to do with economics. My colleagues who I revere as outstanding teachers are now in a situation of ambiguity as to whether they should continue being teachers, because at the most basic level, people cannot live on a teacher's salary. These things might seem to be cliched as issues, but I tell you what, these are core issues. And I believe that governments in the Caribbean are not paying enough attention to that critical issue. The quality of teaching, in my mind, is the central pivot around which we will either create a vortex that produces something that we can be proud of and something that can make our region sustainable, or if we do not attend to the quality of our teaching and our teachers, we will continue to slide down to the bottom of the vortex.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for your contribution.
It was a very good point that was raised by Mr. Wong, and it's a problem that is facing, I think, the teaching profession around the world. You're not hearing younger people say, when I grow up, I want to become a teacher. There's something fundamentally wrong with what is happening. There could be a number of reasons for that, but I think there needs to be a push in our individual countries to try to attract the biggest and brightest persons to become teachers, because the successful education systems like Finland and so forth that do very well, teachers are revered, highly respected. It's something that all of us have to, in the Caribbean, have to certainly take a very good look at it. So I know the difficulty, I know the problem that he has raised, and he's quite right.
Let me just mention a critical area where the issue of equity concerns us. That is at the early childhood level. It is essentially a private sector-driven subsector, and we are experiencing situations where those students or those young minds who should be engaged at school are actually not in school. And so there's a challenge for government, for ministries of education, for parents to ensure that those children enter school.
As soon as the kids came to my school, one of the first things, or it was ingrained in everything that we did, that they were responsible for the outcome of their education. At 6, we started teaching them that it was the decisions they made, it was the choices they made. We gave them the rules, we gave them the expectations, and taught them how to live within that and make the best choices. And I believe that that's what led to the success of the students.
I remember as a child I loved reading, and I was able to read and express myself very well. And because of my ability to do that, it was easier for me when I went into secondary school to do what it is that I needed to do. So I think focusing on early childhood education, it is very, very important.
And for someone like me, you know, a lot of my early childhood education came not just from preschool, and I also went to Montessori preschool, but also at home. You know, I had parents who sort of nurtured that curious instinct. But the bigger question is about students who don't have that.
Minister Walwyn wanted to add
Yes,
to
I just wanted to add something, because there are a number of difficulties. I think the biggest difficulty you have is that is the most important period in the learning process for a child. It's the most important formative years in education, but you have the least qualified persons, in most cases, delivering instructions at that level. And that is part of the problem that we have to address as a community, as a Caribbean community, as an OECS community. How do we get the persons at that level sufficiently trained to be able to deliver what we expect them to deliver so that the primary school can build? And that in and of itself, again, creates another issue, the issue of affordability. Because if they're privately owned, and now people are now required, who are delivering instructions, are now required to have a higher level of education, what does that do to the fees? And overall access overall. So it's something that really definitely needs a regional approach for us to be able to get it fixed.
Given the importance of early childhood education and the foundation that it lays for everything to come, it stands to reason that perhaps that's where the governmental investment ought to be, and not at the end of the spectrum, no? It seems to be at the results stage.
Most of the intervention comes later on.
It comes later on.
When it's cheaper, if you're talking economics, and other things, to be able to deal with it at an earlier age.
Well, prevention is better than cure. And prevention's supposed to be cheaper than cure, no?
Absolutely.
Yeah? So perhaps moving forward, we can see at the OECS level, maybe some kind of unified policy that addresses more investment in early childhood education, Mr. Albertin?
There's a comforting scenario where governments have recognized the value of early childhood education and have publicly stated policies of universal access to early childhood education. The primary school enrollment is sort of in decline because of the decline in population rates. And so this creates an opportunity for, creates space at the primary level, and that creates an opportunity for governments to provide, to use the space to provide for early childhood education. But I need to say that we recognizing the value of that sector. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think this is an apt time to share the video, which was shot in St. Kitts and Nevis. The main character is a product of both public and private education.
My name is Rashid Stanley. I'm from St. Kitts and Nevis, Middle Island here. I'm 17 years of age, and some of my interests include observing nature. So that comes with my interest in photography and different creative arts, such as cinematography and graphic design. Right now, I attend the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, locally known as CFBC. It's located in Baster St. Kitts, the heart of town, and I study the course Natural Science. I would say that I'm doing lots of research, from watching videos of actual procedures or reading books from authors such as Ben Carson, as I mentioned before, or keeping up with the news as it pertains to groundbreaking research in not just neurosurgery, but different, like the whole medical field in general. I went to the Baster High School, located in Baster St. Kitts, and it was really tough, but I made it. I did 11 subjects, and I passed all of them. I got grade 1s to grade 3s, and I could say that I was really surprised with my results, actually. You know, taking on 4 science subjects as my core subjects, and also having Spanish, which I did since Montessori Children's School, which was my preschool.
So he came to the Montessori school, and there he was exposed to reading and writing at an early age. Rashid started reading at 3 years old. So when I saw that, I continued pushing him, and honestly, giving him that foundation has helped him to be the person he is today.
How he benefited was that we created an environment where he was just exposed to so many different things. He was exposed to music, he was exposed to geography, he was exposed to science experiments at a very young age, in a very basic way to start with, things like mixing colors, things that would sink, things that would float, surface tension. And that creates interest that we're all different individuals, and we all have a path that we're going to take. It's our job as teachers to help you along your path.
Our playground was a bit different, not just the physical one, but like the whole playground in the sense like our whole social scene. And so I was like willing to learn about other people's cultures. I was willing to learn about their lifestyle and how they, just the whole interaction. That I feel that was the thing that really fueled my curiosity.
And further on in his future, he said he wants to be a doctor. And as we all know, being a doctor is not cheap. So it's kind of, so I just, as I said, I just trying to push him and encourage him. But I know he will continue to make me proud.
It takes a lot of willpower to be able to succeed in academics. It takes a lot of willpower to not just get by, but to be able to find your purpose and to see why is it you're here in this situation, whether it be public school or private school. So benefiting from both the public and the private school experience, I would say that the biggest contrast between the two would be in the classroom setting.
Mentorship exists at all levels, and students feel a rapport with their teacher. They feel the love, they feel the support, and it's a lot of individual attention which they receive, and they then apply that in very successful ways at school and in the community.
Nice. All right, Jamani. Good job. All right. And Sarah Jane, have a great day, Sarah. All right, see ya. Cool boots, cowgirl.
You're creating children that are self-motivated. They're working, they're exploring, they're mastering on their own, and you are gently encouraging them, not through overt praise, but by asking them how they feel about their work, whether they enjoyed it, whether they want to do more. And that self-motivation and those problem-solving skills and teaching them to be critical learners, that's what they take, being good workers.
The school is just a place where people go, okay? What happens there depends on largely the ability of the child, the capacity of the child, and the facilities that the school will offer.
The educational service provided by the local schools is more internalized. It's for the greater good of the community of students and learners. The truly international aspect of education would be that students, regardless of placement, would be able to create change and shift paradigms and create new opportunities for greatness in the world. And I think that is happening at the local levels, but the mandate seems to be more in keeping with localization rather than internationalization.
I don't agree that it doesn't teach students to think globally. Even if it's math, if it's IT, you have to take into consideration that you're not in a vacuum, that we don't teach because it only happens in the Caribbean. We do teach with a global emphasis.
We are dealing with students from a wide range. We are dealing with the exceptional, we are dealing with the average students, we are dealing with the special needs students. So it's very obvious that the end result is going to be scattered. There will always be that bell shape at the end of the day. And we should learn to expect it, and we should learn to accept that. What happens in some of the private schools is that they eliminate the other parts of that bell curve.
There seems to be the greater need for private independent schools to justify what they're doing as a comparison to what's already offered in the local schools. And it seems to be a hedging of sorts. We're trying to create greater faith between the two bodies so that we can incorporate what we're doing at an international level to help assist at the local level as well, and vice versa.
I do believe that public education still works.
What we have to learn to do now is to teach our students to be able to utilize that information in whatever context that they find themselves in. And that is something we probably need to work on.
A lot of issues coming out of that piece. Minister Walwyn, what are your thoughts?
From my office, even though we don't have the type of authority over the private institutions like we have with the public institutions, I think they're still teaching all of our children. There are some nuances. For instance, one of the teachers, I think, in Antigua raised a couple of them. You have teacher ratio issues. The teacher to student ratio in the private schools are significantly lower in many instances compared to the public schools. But the overriding thing is that we must provide access to education for all students. And so the public school system doesn't have the luxury of having the pick of the litter. So I think more of the emphasis has got to be and working with each other.
And I want to give Dale an opportunity to respond as the representative here from the private school environment.
Well, it was very interesting because my school was usually about 50-50, 50% expats and 50% local children at the school. So it really gave us a good look at, you know, both sectors of the community that were at the school and what the parents wanted for them. But the thing is, I think that was different about the school. It wasn't based on the subjects. It was based on giving them the tools in which they could be in control and take responsibility for their own learning wherever they went.
I just want to say that I'm really happy that this discussion is even happening. Moving forward, as somebody who went through the system from sort of start to finish, I do hope that we take heed of, you know, a lot of the things that have been discussed today, and especially when it comes to looking at early childhood education. I do also hope that as we move forward, our policymakers take a very research-based approach. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here. There are things that are working in other places that we can look at. I think technology is a big part of that equation, not in replacing teachers, but in, again, allowing them to do more with what they have.
And if there can be more collaboration between the public and private, and that we do start concentrating on building the character education as being key to building the citizens that we want for tomorrow in the classrooms and making that accessible to everybody, it would be very key throughout the region.
Just quickly, because I heard a lot about international education. I'm not so sure what that is. Education really is situational. The education in Cuba is developed for people of Cuba. The education in the United States is developed to bring about something. That person should be able to operate not only within the Caribbean, but also outside of the Caribbean. So when we begin to speak about international education, what do we really mean? The second thing is that education is about partnerships. And the greater partnerships you have, the better it is going to be education. And finally, education is about, and the way students learn is through collaboration. And we need to make more opportunities for students to work together in groups and to generate knowledge and to share knowledge.
Thank you so much. Minister, we've come to your beautiful island to kick off this Vini Cose series, and we'd like to honor you with the final comment from the panel.
I want to thank you very much, Onel, and the OECS Commission for your wisdom in making sure that you start this series here in the Virgin Islands.
Noted. Thank you.
I think in the Caribbean, certainly we have a lot of challenges, but we have a lot of successes as well. And we should also focus very much on that. One little sticking point that just before I go, I heard the term academically inclined somewhere. And I think it is something that should no longer be part of our vocabulary in education. Our approach must be that every child can learn, every child can succeed. It is up to us who are involved in education to find the right way to teach them.
The most important thing that needs to be done in Caribbean education, I would say, make learning fun. Because if we do that, a lot of the problems we face disappear. It's no longer learning by rote, it's excitement, it's discovery, it's stimulating curiosity, it's encouraging critical thinking, it's teachers being on a journey with students, so not the imposition of this, the sage on the stage, but a guide on the side. So a lot of things will need to change, but it's not as complex a process as we think it is. We have to see education as an ecosystem, so see it in its totality. Like every natural ecosystem, if you make changes in one component or one element of it, it impacts the rest. If you decide you need to change your curriculum, you can develop the most advanced and sophisticated curriculum, but if you don't train your teachers or even engage your teachers in that process, then there's a serious disconnect. So your curriculum will remain up here and your teachers will be out there. If you don't change your methods of assessment and testing to be consistent with that curriculum, you have a disconnect. If you don't engage parents in the process, there's a disconnect. So when I talk about the need to reshape education, it has to be done bearing in mind that the changes we need to make must be integrated and systemic. They cannot be in silos or one-shot efforts. There's no single one-shot solution to the problem. And I want to suggest that in terms of the broader picture, there are three key elements to it. One is that education must serve the purposes of helping us to shape a regenerative society. I think it was Peter Senge who said that the challenge in the 21st century is not just growth with equity, but regeneration, the capacity of societies to reinvent themselves, to refresh themselves, to advance and to innovate. The second one is the need to create a sustainable economy. As you know, historically, Caribbean societies have come from plantation economies. In a sense, our economies were artificial constructs of the empire. So now that we are independent, and now that we are in this 21st century juncture in history, the challenge is how do we create an economy that is self-sustaining, that is viable, that can ensure continuous growth to meet the demands of the population. And the third issue is that of the imperative of building a participatory democracy, where people understand their role as citizens and understand not just their rights, but also embrace their responsibilities. So I think these are the three broad picture elements that have to be brought into focus when we begin to have a meaningful discussion about education in today's Caribbean. And creativity is an important element. Whether you're talking science or entertainment or culture, creativity is at the heart of it. And the education system has to cultivate critical thinking and creativity as essential attributes of building the new Caribbean person.
Come talk, come chat, come listen. Let's talk integration, one OECS region. Antigua, Vinicose, Anguilla, Vinicose, BVI, Dominica, Vinicose, hey, Grenada, Vinicose, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Montserrat, Martinique, Vinicose. The OECS Public Education Forum Series, Vinicose. Come chat to us, come talk to us, we're listening. Vinicose is brought to you by the OECS 10th EDF Economic Integration and Trade of the OECS Region Project. Vinicose.